All right, welcome everyone to the May 19th Planning Board meeting. A couple of folks aren't here yet. They may show up later. But Holly's not here, so when you're speaking, make sure your mic is on because she'll transcribe the minutes from the recording, okay? So we'll just start out. I'll call the roll. I'm here. Birch Craig has a conflict. Caroline?
Here.
Mr. Winterman?
Here.
Mr. Groat's not here. Mr. Youthy?
Here.
And Vice Chair Komsky.
Here.
Here. All right, stand with us and salute the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Well, welcome. We have two applicants here that will be looking at their applications later in the agenda. But first thing is the privilege of the floor. Is there anything anyone wants to bring up to the board that's not on the agenda? All right. Good. We'll move to approving the minutes from the April 28th meeting. Holly sent those out with the agenda. Any corrections?
I have a couple.
Okay.
I noticed in the section about the timber harvest where we were discussing the need to revise. So that's that large paragraph with the 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
South of South Bristol needs to be capitalized, the word south, and it says timber instead of timber.
Okay.
And it says that I'm the one that mentioned that application should be reviewed. Somebody mentioned it. I'm not familiar with that, so maybe we could just say it was mentioned that the South Bristol.
Because it was, I believe it was the forester that mentioned it.
Was that who mentioned it? Yeah,
So we will just say it was mentioned. Okay.
that would be a good model.
It was mentioned.
And then I didn't know if at the top of that page, the paragraph that starts with Joe Crutchen,
Yes.
the second sentence, a site plan is required for this property because the harvest is greater than 10,000 board feet. I didn't know if we also wanted to mention it's because of the DEC. Is it licensing? Is that the correct term?
Certified.
Certified.
Yeah.
That this particular person performing the work is not certified by the DEC, I think is more of a correct statement.
Okay. Well, the deal is if the timber harvest application is submitted with a DEC or 480 or 3 conditions, then they're exempt. If they're not, if they don't have that, then there's a couple of things they have to, if it's conditions greater than 10,000 board feet and there are 2 other conditions, so we should probably say one or the other, right? Include all of the conditions that would require it, or the DEC forester.
Yeah, I think we just need to add something here that this particular vendor
I'll
is
figure out
not.
the wording on that. So and in that same sentence, it's actually chapter 120, section 82, not section 182. All right, anything else?
Nope.
Okay, have a motion to approve with the corrections.
I'll make a
I make a
motion.
motion to approve with the corrections.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. So you got Dwight. Okay. All right. So we're going to go into reports. I attended the May 12th town board meeting last Monday. There was a public hearing to entertain comments pertaining to local law 2. Local law 2 states, I was just looking for it. I don't have the section, chapter and section, but it has to do with buildings that require a building permit. Our codes currently says that any building less than 100 square feet do not require a building permit. They are, of course, subject to setbacks and other safety, anything electrical. But back in 2011, the town board by resolution changed the code. That was never put into the code book, okay? And so I've been operating on one premise and code enforcement on another. So that the resolution was actually September of 2011, based on a recommendation from the then CEO Bob Best to change that from 100 square feet to 144 square feet. That brings it in line with New York State. Okay, the New York State code requires that and states that. I asked, well, what's the justification? This was just a resolution. It was Chairman Berkey motion, Councilman Hershey seconded. It was unanimously carried to approve the recommendation from Mr. Best to move forward with a proposed local law amendment. And they had no reasons. And nobody really could remember that far back, because I don't think any of the board members were there then. But Joe Miller, the CEO, seemed to remember that the reason was just to bring it into conformance in New York State. My personal opinion is I wouldn't change it. I kind of like to make sure buildings are, conform. And I also brought up the fact that, in today's culture, people are living in tiny houses, tiny homes. And you want somebody, that's potential. I've seen things on the internet. People live in places less than 100 square feet. But, if you're going to revise the law from 144 to 100, I would think there'd be some good reason for it other than bringing it in compliance, particularly with, changing cultures. Nobody really bought that, so they went ahead and approved that anyway. Yeah, so the motion then was made to actually update the code book, and they were going to send it to the town attorney to make sure everything was okay. And so they are going to start the process to change that, requiring a building permit for buildings only less than 144 square feet. Maybe a picky item, but I didn't particularly like it myself. Other than that, not a whole lot. Let's see. Code enforcement officer mentioned that they're moving ahead with getting a contractor to demolish the building on Ross Road. They made a decision. I don't recall but they're moving ahead with it. And he's under I believe a 90-day timeline to get that work done. So that unsightly property is still pretty unsightly, even with what they're going to do, but this will help. So they are moving ahead and they have a contractor. It was a local contractor. Highway Department, just doing a lot of work on Canadice Hill Road, cutting trees, and actually that's part of their 5-year plan. So he reported a little bit on that. They started a shoulder mowing on the town roads, town and county roads in our town. They engaging an intern from the BOCES school over in Flint Creek. They had an intern last year. The intern learned a lot, actually did some work, and so they have another intern signed up to work with them this summer. They'd received 14 applicants for the MEO job, the highway department equipment operator. They had narrowed it down to 6, and they were going to interview those. Jeremy Frame, the superintendent, and Mark Stat, one of the councilmen, were going to conduct interviews starting last Tuesday. So It was good that they had a lot of interest and they'll be able to fill that spot. Honey Lake watershed, said the lake is about 8 feet high of a normal level, but that's normal for this time of year. So 8 feet sounds pretty high to me, but people can't put their docks in until that water goes down. And the weed harvesting is going to start June 30th for another year. Unfinished business, Jersey Hill engineering study. They're still working on that, trying to figure out what to do to reinforce Jersey Hill, keep it from eroding any more than it is. Whether they're going to reinforce it there or try to move the road and do some reinforcement. They're still studying that. They mentioned the comprehensive plan engagement meeting, June 12th. We're looking for a town gardener. Anybody wants to be the town gardener? I guess it's a paid position. I don't know the requirements. Check with Chris Festola for that. And they're buying some new computer equipment for the town staff. There was an updated 5-year plan for the highway superintendent, if you wanted to see that. They're going to be working on Canadace Hill Road, 4 different parts. They're working on the first part, and that's what he mentioned at the meeting, from Harriet Hollister Park south to Tibbles Road. What they're going to do this year is trim the overhanging tree canopy, box out chronic soft spots, fill it, and get it ready for it. Next year, they're going to do more extensive projects. Anybody wants to see this, Johnson Hill repair is also on for this year. 2026, we're going to finish Canadace Hill Road. 2027, we're going to do Lukenbach Hill Road, reconstruct it there. And that's his plan. If you want to see his plan, he's required to put that in. Oh, excellent. 2028, continue on Lukenbach Hill Road, do some work on Canadace Lake Road and Old Bald Hill South. Those that are in 28 and 29, they usually get changed before they get to those dates, but he does have a plan. And that was it. Any questions? Okay. Next one is County Planning Board meeting. I don't know if Birch was in town to go to that or not. He's
Yep,
not.
he was, and he told me to let folks know here, there was nothing affecting Canadice at the county planning board meeting.
Oh, thank you, Caroline.
Mhm.
So- Code enforcement, you have the list of activities from the CEO for the month of May. Questions, refer to Joe Miller directly. Oh, we skipped zoning board. Zoning board did have a meeting this month, last week. Looking at a variance for a fence that was apparently already installed and they hadn't gotten permission to do it. So they didn't have any minutes out. So, but on the agenda, they said they were going to be.
It was a little bit more contentious than that.
Oh, really?
The
Oh, okay.
owner states that in verbal discussions prior to purchasing the property, they came to the enforcement office and asked the question about fencing.
Mhm.
And in that verbal exchange, they were under the impression that what they were going to do would be reasonable and would be allowed. And they came to the meeting with their lawyer and a lot of documentation from the state of New York DOT saying that they would be okay if the fence was repositioned to, a specific spot on their property. And so they were just trying to get an approval to move it to that spot based on the DOT's endorsement.
Okay.
What's the location?
I'm not really sure.
I don't remember the address.
Must be on a state road then.
Yes,
The DOT's involved.
yes. And it was a corner as well. So that was
Looks like something about a
another
corner
layer
lot,
of
yeah.
issue.
Okay. I didn't look to see if they have a video recording. They do. Okay, so you can look at that if you're interested to see what's happening. Did they make a decision or did they put it off until next month?
I did not stay till the end of the meeting,
They
so I don't
typically
know.
do things in 2 months at the zoning board, so there's some activity going on the zoning board. Okay, thanks, Rich, for filling us in with that. All right, comprehensive plan and things.
So
Or-
we're moving forward. We're gonna be doing our public engagement meeting on June 12th. That's gonna be a Thursday at 6 o'clock. A postcard mailing will be going out sometime this week. It should be going out. And that's gonna advertise that meeting as well as our August public hearing. And then the other item of note is Supervisor Bastola is assisting us in doing some youth engagement. So he was working with some students at the local school in a government class to talk about our comprehensive plan. And we did put together a short survey specifically targeting students.
To get involved or just for information?
Both.
Okay. Interesting.
Caitlin, we're gonna have another meeting before the 12th, right?
Potentially, we may schedule an extra meeting for Thursday, May 29th, if
29th,
we
right.
feel like we need it. Just in case we need an extra meeting before our public engagement.
And that's here.
That will be here.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. That's really moving along. Glad to see that. Any other questions for Caitlin? Okay. I put on the agenda the old business, the temporary harvest application that we had reviewed and approved last month. Did get approved by the other town officials, needed to be approved by code enforcement officer, signed it, approved it. The highway department, Jeremy Frame signed it and approved it. And Eileen signed it and recorded it, sent the letter out stating that they were they had been given the approval. At the town board meeting, Mark Stat, councilman, who owns property on County Road 36, west to the border of the Bonity property, mentioned that the forester had come down and spoken to him about perhaps moving logs down his property to County Road 36. He just happened to mention it. He had been there that day. So, well, and the code enforcement officer also spoke of, that's not what was approved. You know, the approval was, if you remember, he was going to transport the logs on the south side of the existing driveway out to the Canada Hill Road, take them north to Route 5 or to Route 28. So that would have been a change to what basically he did not have approval to move them down, even though the landowner said sure, because he's going to earn some money. So the code enforcement officer was going to go down the next day from that meeting and talk to him. I never heard anything back. I was out of town, so I don't know what happened, but
It appears that they're not using that little right of way to the south of the main driveway. They're staging the logs at the main driveway, and I believe that's where the trucks are being loaded.
okay.
I saw a truck come out today, and I believe there was another one that also moved another load today.
Out onto Canada Hill Road.
Yes.
Yeah. So apparently the CEO talked to him and convinced him that, you know, the alternative would have been if they wanted to do something right away without their delay, is they could have gotten us forester to sign off on it that day, and then they could do whatever they wanted to if the forester agreed to that. But I never heard anything back, and I didn't follow up because I wasn't around, so. But it was interesting because it was that very day that the forester had gone down and talked to Mark, because you're gonna do it the next day, and he told Mark, there's gonna be logs coming down there tomorrow, so Joe Miller, the CEO, was going down first thing and talked to him, so apparently he did it if they're bringing them out onto Canada Hill Road, which was what was approved.
Yes.
Okay. All right, new business, site plan application for Gary and Gina Palmer. This is Gary and Gina. Um, This is a fairly straightforward, site plan request. The reason they have to come to us is that they live in the Honeoye Lake Shore district, which actually it's on Joe Bear Drive, if you're familiar. And they're going to make an addition to the existing property. And the addition was approximately 1,200 square feet. Basically, I've given you a drawing, hopefully, you can see what's happening. They're basically just kind of expanding on all sides, okay? So map that we gave you, so preliminary. And we have the dimensions. Hopefully you can read the dimensions on your copies. The pen I was using wasn't very good, but hopefully you can do that. But basically they're adding on to the north and the east and the west. All of the addition, none of the addition brings the area into a setback issue. Setback issues are not an issue. We're well inside setback. The actual construction, moving forward, the building inspector has all of the details on that. So really what we're looking at is what we typically look at for, additions. So the first thing we look at is the dimensions. So you can see the dimensions that are being added on. We're not adding any height to the structure. So we're not increasing the height of the existing structure. The limit down there, by the way, is 35 feet. They can, anyone can build up to 35 feet. So they're well within that with the existing building. And it's tying in. So the one thing that we typically look at for something like this is stormwater management. What are we going to do, with the water that's going to be coming off the roofs here? And maybe you could just describe, Barry or Gina, what we're going to do with that?
Yeah.
Just
so
for the board.
Yeah, so on the back of the house today, there's gutters that come down and then enter the lawn. Foundations, area pipe out to the front garden. So this gets in the basement. I know my damper than it should be, so.
Okay.
But, solid place was about it. And then on the other end of the building, it comes out and goes into a pipe that runs underground out to the ditch. Side of the property.
Which is on the north side? Okay, yeah.
So it works.
So that one's going in. and-
Damage that big foundation. I think it's taken out. That,
Okay,
and the front currently comes off in the back garden.
Okay.
Three main downspouts, we just gotta worry about.
okay. They're not doing anything on a driveway, so they're not adding any hard surfaces to the home either. So that's the project. I guess we'll open to any questions that people might have about what we're doing or what's being requested. Got the final? Oh, the building plans, yeah.
Yeah. Joe.
Joe, yeah, the code enforcement officer, so pretty straightforward. I met, we typically leaf through the code book for site plans. And the only issue that would have any impact, as I saw, would be the water management. No fencing, there's no disturbance of ground other than where they'll be building on the foundations. So looks really good. They're on public sewers, on public water, so we don't have to look for those kinds of things or have any issues. Questions?
No,
So I would entertain a motion to grant preliminary approval. I didn't open the public hearing. You should have interrupted. Let's back. Well, we can still do it.
I'll make a
Um,
motion to open the public hearing.
Okay. But all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Well, the public is, there's no one here. Oh, Drew's here. But we do have the public hearing. We've, if you've been listening, you've heard the project, and so there are no comments from the public. So at this point, we will entertain a motion to grant preliminary approval to the site plan application for Gary and Gina.
I move we grant preliminary approval to the site plan.
Thank you, Dwight.
You're welcome.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, great. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Carried. Okay. So now the fun part of the assessment form, environmental quality review form. Pretty straightforward, the address, the action. And so did anyone have any questions on any of the questions in part one? Steve's not here, but I think we've answered the questions that he would ask. Yes.
This. It says, does the proposed action, this is number 9.
Okay,
Does the proposed action meet or exceed the state energy code requirements? And there's a yes there. And if the proposed action will exceed requirements, describe design features and technologies. So does it mean, is that one of those where if it meets, they don't have to add anything? Okay,
yes. If it meets, you don't have to go any
Okay.
further than that.
okay.
Yes.
Um,
Good question.
okay. And then, I think I figured that one out myself. Okay.
Okay. Again, pretty straightforward. And the description and question number 7 about plan to direct water into the front garden area. No questions? Let's move to part 2. Caroline, you said you wanted to read these questions for us, so. So we're just moving to part 2 where we're asking these questions. Will the proposed action have impact on these things? So thank you, Caroline. Correct, yes.
Will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulations? No. Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land? No. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? No. Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area? No. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway? No. Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? No. Will the proposed action impact existing public-private water supplies? No. Or public-private wastewater treatment utilities? No. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? No. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources, for example, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora and fauna? No. Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? No. And will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? No.
Thank you. So based on the fact that they're all no, we move to part 3, and this is by resolution. Will this action have a positive or have a negative impact on the environment? Based on, go ahead.
I'll make a motion that there's no negative impact.
Okay. Second,
I'll second.
Dwight, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so I'll check this, no negative impact. That takes care of the quality environmental assessment form. At this point, We will close the public hearing.
I'll
by
make a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you,
Second it.
Caitlin. Lloyd, seconds, all in favor?
I,
Thank you. So at this point, I had advised them not to go ahead and get a final site map prepared, just in case something came up here tonight. So what I'd like to do is grant final approval conditioned upon them submitting a final site plan map to me, 2 copies prepared and signed by either a licensed surveyor, architect, or engineer. So I'd like a motion to that effect,
I'll make a motion to grant final approval,
condition.
conditioned on submission of a complete site plan.
Okay, second, Caroline, any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. Thank you all. So just whenever you get that, so you have the approval. You know, Joe won't issue a building permit, however, until we get that final site map. So, and I think I mentioned we need 2 copies in color, this something about this size or so, whoever you engage, they know typically what size. Some make them bigger, but they need to be at least this big so we can see the details. And you have up to 6 months to do it. The approval is good for 6 months. So let me know by email and we can arrange to get together. I'll sign it and accept it. Yeah, thanks for coming down tonight and
Thank you.
Yes. We're moving from Rochester.
you're gonna be permanent. huh?
Permanent,
Yeah,
Mm.
that's great.
Are you interested in joining the planning board?
Yeah.
We have 2 openings.
Connecticut, and, I could be interested in this kind of stuff like Joe does and stuff. I'm retiring next year, so, yeah, I am.
Well,
yeah.
you
We,
kind of have a flavor for the things we do.
Yeah.
Other than site works, we do subdivisions. That's what Drew's here for. Subdivide properties and so.
we have a member who would like to retire, but we can't fill his seat. So please keep us in mind. We won't allow him.
He's staying on, although he's,
Not here.
well, because again, we're here the 3rd Monday instead of the 4th, so that's probably why he's not here. So thanks very much for coming. You're welcome to leave or stick around, up to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll get back to you soon.
Okay,
Joe to get us that permit quick.
yeah, yeah.
That goes waiting.
Oh.
Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye. All right. The second item is a subdivision application for Mr. Andrew Cittadino for property 5944 County Road 36. Like he goes by Drew, that's why I called him Drew. On County Road 36, and we've included he wants to subdivide into 2 approximately equal acreages, roughly, okay? I've given you the county tax map and drawn in red approximately what he would like to do. The one, again, to create a new lot, he's in the rural district, okay, because he's on the west side, County Road 36, so he's not subject to the Coney Island Lake Shore regulations, subject to rural district. So in a rural district, any new plot has to be a minimum of 3 acres, 250 feet of road frontage, minimum width of 250 and minimum depth of 250. Those are kind of the dimensional requirements, okay? So if you look on the map, again, I suggested to Andrew that he not get the survey done until, we get through this process, even though he wants to move this along quickly, so we can do this tonight, hopefully. The only issue is the north road frontage on the north side is listed as 249.9 feet. I suspect that a surveyor will find a 0.01 and make that a 250 when he creates a survey. Even if not, my mind, that's conforming. You know, it's 250 is the minimum. So he's got 249, and I don't, you know, these county tax maps are created off existing surveys or public old records, so hopefully, you know, this is up to date, so. And I measured it on Encore as well, and it came out to the same. Actually, the south, I came out a little more than 250, and the south has 248.2. I measured it on Encore, it came out 251, so
I'm a little confused just before we go any further. So this whole outer area is the property line?
yes.
And
Except
then
for these,
this
except
is
for
the
these
new
two,
line.
these two.
Yeah,
That's the
besides
problem.
that.
Yeah, that's
So it's this sort of,
the proposed, yeah,
has two arms, and then
Yeah.
the line going through the 30.1 is the proposed new one.
is the proposed new one. And he's got approximately 24 acres, so he wants to get, what, 12 and 12 or 10,
Yeah.
10 and
Yeah.
14 or
It's
something.
Okay,
Kind of at the discretion, I think, of the survey, if the surveyor needs to move it a little bit.
Yeah, it's just gullies and such.
Right, so if there's a gully that comes
Yeah,
in there, typically you
But
don't.
no, that's basically
Yep.
where we're looking at.
okay. I just want to make sure I was looking
Yeah.
at this right.
There is a house on the property. It's on the south part. It doesn't show up here, but it's near the road on the south part.
Okay.
We're right to the west of the 248.2. Okay, that's his existing house. There are no other structures on the property. There are no utilities, no wells or septics, correct? It's kind of a steep slope, isn't it? Does it?
Right next to the water tower, so. it's-
Yeah, if you-
Okay.
Yeah,
But
the water tower on the north side, about halfway up his property. If you see that little square right there, I believe that's the water tower.
Oh.
That's the water tower.
That's the water.
But that's not on your property.
No, that's not on my property, but
Right.
that, just so you know
Got
the
it.
grade,
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, the issues the town had.
So
with
I
that.
was more confused too.
Yeah.
we're gonna divide the 10 acres from.
Basically, this property line is going straight now, all the way up through here roughly.
Yeah, and over here.
This is the part that I'm so defending now. My house is over here. So. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, so you own all this land over here?
What?
You own this land over?
No, I own all this big kind of like.
You own the
horseshoe.
whole thing?
Yeah, all
Okay.
this.
Got it. And this is the 10 acres.
This is property. Like.
I got it. Okay.
Clarified maps out, I didn't do a good job. So let's open a public hearing to consider this application.
I'll make a motion to open a public hearing.
I'll second.
Thank you, Rich. All in favor?
Aye.
Carry. So now, having the description of the project, there really, in my mind here, there are no other regulations. The only differences are these slightly under 250 feet, but I'm willing to say they're okay.
About a foot.
So during this process, won't he need to get a stamped surveyed map? of
Yes.
The two properties?
Yes, he will.
So at that point, we're hoping that reality,
Well, he may
250.
find a foot or two of land, yeah. Again, these are taken from either a pre-existing survey that the county has or land records.
Well, we ran into that issue recently, like depending on how close to the road you go, you may be able to find
Right.
that.
And Drew's, he's gonna get a local surveyor and, local surveyors know it has to be 250 feet. Even if, my mind, even if it comes out to 248.8 or 248.2, I'm not going to stop the action. I wouldn't stop the action based on that.
But he owns the land right next to it. That too.
It's all one horseshoe shaped
249.
property right now.
I mean, you could find a foot there.
He only owns the part that's marked 30.1. And that's this
Yeah.
line of this property.
30.1. Yeah.
So he does not own the adjoining property.
So he's got hard lines he has to stay within. to come
Well,
up with that.
there are extra lines on those maps.
Oh, I know, I know.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't make this more clear.
No, it's not.
So here's his,
I was talking to him. Yeah, he's got 30.1.
so here's his property line
Right. Down here,
down to here. Here, and then he does not own this.
it's interesting,
These are two other properties.
right?
So that's his existing. So he does not own
Right,
that
Right,
or that.
can't find a foot there.
I mean, it kind of looks like somebody told him when they created this lot that he needed 250 feet and it came up a little short. Again, okay, so back to the consideration, no other buildings, no utilities on the property, no wells.
So wait, there's a house, but there's no utilities for the house?
I mean, no additional, no,
Nothing on the piece that's being subdivided.
yeah, I should have shown the house is right here next to the 248.2, very close to the road.
Okay,
And anything else?
So I have just a quick question.
Of course.
The best we could hope for this evening is a preliminary approval because we don't have the final mapped surveys as shown, especially for the piece that your house is on. We'd like to see where the well is, where we would like to see the utilities.
Right.
All of that would come at a later meeting.
Well, what we typically do is we would, knowing the circumstances, and we would grant a final approval on the condition that a final survey map be submitted and point out those details of what must show up on that final survey map. And again, that, you know, he wouldn't have to wait for another month for our next meeting to do that unless can't get it by then, and you know, so that's what we typically do. Now, I'm not saying we have to do that.
and then we basically as a board say that we trust Ted to look at the final map and say, yes,
do.
there's the driveway, there's the septic tank, there's the well, there's the utilities, and all of that.
Actually, that's in our requirements that the chairman can, that the board can do a conditional approval and the chairman can sign off on it without having another meeting.
And that's
So
what we just did.
But
for
that's what we try to do that first of time, since we only meet monthly. Good point, though.
Thank you.
You're okay with all of that? I mean, we don't have to do it that way, but okay.
We know you're thorough, Ted. We trust you.
Nitpicky. Why was-
No, thorough.
Thorough, okay. All right, then I guess if there are no other questions, I would grant or ask for a motion to grant preliminary approval to the subdivision application.
I'll make a motion to grant preliminary approval.
I'll
Is there a
second.
Dwight, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, quality assessment form. Environmental assessment form, excuse me. I think we didn't have any questions here as we went through this. You know, the questions 9, 10, and 11 are really not applicable, you know, because we're just creating a new separate lot. So we checked no, but then we wrote NA not applicable to those three. And so no questions on this seeker?
Nope.
All right. Well, having just read through those questions, or these questions in part 2, I guess I would just ask, does anyone have anything other than a no answer to any of those questions?
No.
No,
So we'll move to part 3.
I'll make a motion that there's no negative impact.
Caitlin, okay, is there a second? Thank you, Caroline. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I'll check this. Bear with me a moment here. I usually fill this out while we go through those questions. All right, we need to close the public hearing by motion.
We'll move, we close the public hearing.
Dwight. Second, Caroline, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed. And we've already discussed then the next step, since we didn't really identify any issues other than some of the details that need to show up on the survey map. I would entertain a motion to grant conditional final approval of the subdivision application conditioned upon submitting a final survey maps, signed and stamped by a surveyor, engineer, or architect. And we want to make sure that all of the buildings are on the survey. All the conditions are in the code book. But we need to see the driveway, where it comes in from the road, and the location of the well, location of the septic, location of any utility poles. You're on, on that side of the road, you're on city water?
So you have to put the water line in.
Yeah, so it just has to show up the water.
No, the house already has.
No, on the map,
the
we're
survey map.
saying, on the survey
Oh.
map, the water line
Yeah.
has to be, do you have sewer or septic? That
Oh,
line will
that-
be,
Down.
Yep.
So then you need to show the sewer.
Oh, really? Okay, you're on the other side. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
so any utilities, whether they're public or,
Yeah, all right.
no easements on either piece of the property?
There is a county easement,
Okay,
or basically, flow from the water tower runoff washout situation that I allowed to go on.
the easement will just need to be listed on the map too.
So, yeah, so the survey will need the easement. I mean, the building locations. The sewer or septic, you said it's on sewer or septic?
No, it's not.
Septic.
Okay, that's.
Private wastewater, public
Sep-
water.
and water line.
They need the location of the old well. On there.
I
You're not using it to serve the host.
don't believe so.
I-
Okay,
I mean, it doesn't hurt
okay.
Yeah.
if you know where it is, you know, the more,
If you
the
know
more
where it is,
information,
With the mower.
the more information you have, the better.
Yeah,
So if you know where it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt to include it.
so the water line and the well. And the surveyor will know that you have to have all of the property lines well defined
Yeah.
with the distances, the measurements.
Yeah.
From all of those. Let's just take a look. Chapter 108, or excuse me, chapter 120. 118, I think it is. So for your information, it's chapter 120, section 118. The map has to have the title, the area map showing the tax map number, showing all properties, roads, easements, any internal road pattern, location of all existing and proposed structures. Contour lines have to be on it. Separate drainage report, water supply. Final. So those are the key things that have to show up on that survey. So did we motion?
Not yet.
Not
I'll
yet.
make a motion to grant final approval conditional on the submission of a stamped and complete site plan with the items we discussed.
Survey.
Survey.
Yeah, survey. Okay,
I'll second.
Rich. Anything else? Any other discussion points? Anything from you, Andrew, for us? Okay, all in favor?
I
Opposed, carried. Okay, so go ahead and get your surveyor lined up. Let me know. And again,
I'll be in touch.
when you get it, email or phone message and hook up together. I'll stamp it and sign it. And the surveyor will need to provide 3 paper copies and 1 Mylar copy. Not all surveyors know that, but they have to be at least 11 by 14, 3 paper copies and 1 Mylar copy. All stamped and signed.
Is it 2 or 3 paper copies?
Well, we asked for 3
3. Okay.
because we put 1 in the building
Okay.
department. We keep 1, building department keeps 1, and you take,
1 paper, 1 Mylar.
no,
I think it's 2
No,
paper,
it's
1.
2. Yeah, the county needs 2 paper and 1. We keep 1. So actually, we need 4 papers. More. Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay.
And when we get together to sign it, I'll remind you what, you have to take them over to the county, have the county record them.
Okay,
Okay,
all right, sounds good.
all right, so be in touch and thanks for coming down tonight. You're welcome.
Thank you.
And we do have openings on the planning board. We have 2.
Did you right now?
Okay, keep it in mind. I did have Eileen update the website to say that we're looking for a regular and an alternate member.
It's the advertisement from Gardner. It's 3 to 6 hours a week.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, just for around here,
Just,
just to keep this looking beautiful.
okay. All right, final privilege of the floor.
Question, and I think I know the answer. So the reason the Palmers had to come was because their addition was by the lake. It had nothing to do with the size of the addition. It was just that it was by the lake.
No, it does have, in the Honey Island Lake Shore District, any addition of 800 square feet or more, a new building or additional of 800 square feet or more must have site plan approval because they're in the Honey Island Lake Shore District.
Okay.
If they were less than 800 square feet, they don't have to. They would just get a building permit directly. And in the other districts, they don't have to. Only if change of use requires a site plan.
And what about if you're by the watershed, like say out on Candice Lake Road? Watershed doesn't have any kind of.
Well, you have boundaries. You can't be too close to
Mhm.
water, certain wetlands or water
Mhm.
bodies of water that are DEC regulated. But that's just a permitting. That's not getting, we wouldn't get involved in that. That's just.
Thanks.
I just today I got a notice from New York Planning. I'll send it on. They're holding a one-day training session in Canandaigua in July, if you want it. They didn't list the topics yet. I'll send that out to you as soon as I get it. I know some of you are signed up for the Genesee Regional Planning. Next week, right? Oh, the 30th, is it?
A week from
Week-
Friday.
week, okay. And that's all I have. Anything else?
I'll
We
make
do,
a-
we will have one site plan next week. We have another family on the lake that want to add onto their property greater than 800 square feet, so, but they didn't have enough.
Next.
I just met with them this week, so they couldn't make this month's meeting. And they may require a variance. They have to make a decision. So other than that, things are rolling along.
I make a motion to adjourn.
All right, Dwight,
Second.
second, Caitlin, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, everyone.